On the one hand, genuine compassion for harlots and publicans and thieves. On the other hand, morbid preoccupation with sin and with the sinner's confessional. On one hand, real remorse for real wrongdoing. On the other, luxuriating refinements of introspective guilt. On one hand, the genuine fellowship of some early Methodist societies. On the other, social energies denied outlet in public life, which were released in sanctified emotional onanism. On one hand, a religion which found a place for humble men as local preachers and class leaders, which taught them to read and gave them self respect and experience in speaking and in organization. On the other hand, a religion hostile to intellectual inquiry and to artistic values, which sadly abused their intellectual trust. Here was a cult of love, which feared love's effective expression, either as sexual love or in any social form which might irritate relations with authority. Its authentic language of devotion was that of sexual sublimation, streaked through with masochism, the bleeding love, the wounded side, the blood of the lamb. Teach me from every pleasing snare to keep the issues of my heart. Be thou my love, my joy, my fear. Thou my internal portion art. Be thou my never failing friend, and love, oh love me to the end. In London, a Jacobin engraver went to the Garden of Love and found a chapel built in the midst, where I used to play on the green. And the gates of this chapel were shut, and thou shalt not read over the door. In the garden were tombstones where flowers should be, and priests in black gowns were walking their rounds, and binding with briars my joys and desires. So much has been said in recent years of Methodism's positive contribution to the working class movement that it is necessary to remind ourselves that Blake and Cobbett, Lee Hunt and Hazlitt saw the matter differently. We might suppose from some popular accounts that Methodism was no more than a nursing ground for radical and trade union organizers, all formed in the image of the Tolpuddle martyr, George Lovelace, with his small theological library and his forthright independence. The matter is a great deal more complex. At one level, the reactionary, indeed odiously subservient, character of official Wesleyanism can be established without the least difficulty. Wesley's few active interventions into politics included pamphleteering against Dr. Price and the American colonists. He rarely let pass any opportunity to impress upon his followers the doctrines of submission, expressed less at the level of ideas than of superstition. His death, 1791, coincided with the early enthusiasm for the French Revolution, but successive Methodist conferences continued the tradition of their founder, reaffirming their unfeigned loyalty to the king and sincere attachment to the Constitution. Leeds Conference, 1793. The statutes drawn up in the year after Wesley's death were explicit. None of us shall either in writing or in conversation speak lightly or irreverently of the government. Thus, at this level, Methodism appears as a politically regressive or stabilizing influence, and we find some confirmation of Halevi's famous thesis that Methodism prevented revolution in England in the 1790s.